The void between the stars held secrets that even the Concordat, with its 10,000 years of collected wisdom, had never fully understood. High Observer Talara stood at the panoramic viewing portal of the Eternal Vigilance, her crystalline form refracting the light of distant stars as she studied the massive holographic display before her. The dead zone shouldn't have contained anything of interest. It was one of dozens scattered throughout Concordat space, regions where spatial anomalies made conventional travel impossible. Yet here they were, tracking an energy signature unlike anything their sensors had encountered in millennia of space exploration. High Observer. Second Analyst Ven's harmonic voice resonated through the chamber. The signal's pattern has changed again. The serpentine alien scales shifted through shades of deep blue as data streamed across multiple neural interfaces. It's not random interference as we initially thought. There's a structure to it. Talara's crystalline lattice tensed imperceptibly. The Concordat had maintained peace among the spacefaring races for so long that many had forgotten why they needed warships at all. But she remembered. Some things were better left undisturbed. "Show me," she commanded, her thoughts interfacing directly with the ship's systems. The holographic display zoomed in on the anomaly, representing complex energy patterns in swirling colors that even the ship's most sophisticated analysis programs struggled to interpret. "It's beautiful," Ven whispered, momentarily forgetting protocol. "Like nothing in our archives." The beauty was undeniable, but beauty in space often concealed danger. Talara had lost count of how many civilizations had disappeared after investigating something beautiful in the void. Multiple spatial distortions forming. The alert cut through her contemplation. Something's emerging from the dead zone. The holographic display erupted with new data as space itself seemed to fold and ripple. Through the distortion came a ship, if it could be called that. The vessel was massive, easily dwarfing the Eternal Vigilance. Its hull was a seamless blend of curves and angles that seemed to defy conventional engineering, covered in what appeared to be some form of living metal that shifted and flowed like liquid while maintaining perfect structural integrity. "Energy readings are..." Ven's voice faltered. "High Observer, the power output exceeds our measurement capabilities by several orders of magnitude." Talara's crystalline form pulsed with concern. In 10,000 years of Concordat history, they had never encountered anything they couldn't at least measure. Launch probe drones, full spectrum analysis, and begin emergency protocols. Notify the Council immediately. The drones launched, tiny motes of light against the backdrop of space. As they approached the mysterious vessel, something changed. Patterns of light rippled across the ship's living metal surface, forming complex geometries that seemed to fold in on themselves. High Observer. Ven's scales had gone almost white. "The ship, it's reading our probe signals faster than our own systems can process them. It's adapting." Before Talara could respond, a new signal washed over them, not just their sensors, but every system on the ship. It was like nothing she had ever experienced, carrying more raw information in seconds than most civilizations produced in years. And then, finally, words, not in any language of the Concordat, but somehow perfectly understandable to every being on the bridge. "This is the stellar inheritance, carrying the legacy of Earth. We come seeking neither conflict nor conquest, but we will defend ourselves if threatened. Your probes have been analyzed and returned unharmed. Please acknowledge." Earth. The word meant nothing to Talara, but something about it sent ripples through her crystalline matrix. The ship's power, its impossible technology, the casual way it had dissected and improved their most advanced probe designs in seconds, all of it spoke of a civilization that should have been impossible. "High Observer." Ven's voice was barely a whisper now. "The probes, they've been modified. They're sending back data that our systems shouldn't be capable of processing, but somehow we understand it perfectly." Talara finished. The implications were staggering. Either this vessel had instantaneously decoded and adapted to their technology, or they had been expected. "Open a channel," she commanded, her decision crystallizing. All frequencies, full transparency. Let them see us as we are. As the communication systems engaged, Telara felt a sensation she hadn't experienced in centuries: uncertainty. The Concordat had grown comfortable in its role as guardian of known space, but looking at the stellar inheritance, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything they knew was about to change. The central chamber of the eternal vigilance had never felt so small. High Observer Telara watched as the human delegation materialized through what they casually referred to as a simple matter transfer, a technology the Concordat had deemed theoretically impossible millennia ago. Their forms coalesced from streams of light, revealing beings that seemed simultaneously familiar and alien. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the front of the group, her dark eyes reflecting centuries of knowledge that her seemingly young face shouldn't have possessed. Unlike the environmental suits the Concordat had expected, the humans wore what appeared to be ordinary clothing, suits of flowing material that shifted colors subtly with each movement. "Your ship's atmosphere has been analyzed and adjusted for optimal compatibility," Chen explained, her words translating perfectly despite the lack of any visible technology. "We hope this makes our discussion more comfortable for all parties." Ven's scales rippled with barely contained excitement as his sensors attempted to understand how the humans had modified an entire ship's atmosphere in seconds without anyone noticing. The readings made no sense. It was as if the laws of physics themselves had politely stepped aside. "Commander Chen," Telara began, her crystalline form carefully modulated to project calm authority, "your arrival has raised many questions among the Concordat leadership, not least of which is how you survived transit through the dead zone." Chen's smile carried a weight of memories. "What you call dead zones, we call remnants. They're scars in space-time left by the same cataclysm that forced us from Earth. We learned to navigate them out of necessity." The human gestured, and a hologram materialized in the center of the chamber. But unlike any hologram Telara had seen, it was as if a piece of space itself had been folded into the room, showing a blue-green world that could only be Earth. As they watched, the planet's surface began to crack with lines of terrible light. 3,000 years ago, by your time measurement, our world was targeted by something ancient, something that had been sleeping in the dark spaces between galaxies. We never saw our enemy, only the weapon they used." Chen's voice remained steady, but her eyes reflected ancient pain. "The planet's core was transformed into something that defied physics as we understood them. We had hours to evacuate as many as we could." The hologram showed massive ships rising from the dying world, each larger than cities. Behind them, Earth's surface began to fold inward, collapsing into geometries that hurt to look at. Billions died, but those who survived, we learned. We adapted. We took what we knew of physics and engineering and pushed beyond it. When conventional science failed us, we created new sciences. When known space proved hostile, we learned to step sideways through dimensions you haven't discovered yet. Ven's neural interfaces were practically smoking as they tried to process the casual implications in Chen's words. But the power requirements for such technologies became irrelevant. Another human interrupted. A tall man introduced as Dr. Marcus Rivera, their chief scientist. "Energy, matter, space, time, they're all expressions of the same underlying principles. Once you understand that, scarcity becomes a choice rather than a limitation." Telara's crystalline matrix vibrated with growing concern. The capabilities these humans described weren't just advanced, they were revolutionary. The kind of power that could reshape civilizations or destroy them. "And yet you approach us peacefully," she observed. "Why?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because we remember what it means to be alone in the universe. We've spent millennia searching not just for resources or knowledge, but for others who understand the weight of existence, the responsibility of power. The Concordat has maintained peace among the known species for 10,000 years, Telara stated, allowing a note of pride to color her harmonics. "Yes," Chen agreed. "We know. We've been watching, learning your languages, understanding your cultures, making sure that when we finally reveal ourselves, it would be to those who could handle the truth of what's out there. The implications of that statement sent shivers through every being in the chamber. How long had these humans been observing them? How many other ships like the Stellar Inheritance were out there, watching other civilizations? Before Telara could formulate a response, alarms blared through the ship. Ven's scales shifted to emergency red. High observer. Multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. It's the militant faction. Chen's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. Ah, right on schedule. You should know, High Observer, that there are elements within your Concordat who discovered hints of our existence months ago. They'd been planning to acquire our technology ever since. We were hoping to have this conversation before they forced the issue. The human turned to face the viewing portal as 5 Concordat warships dropped into normal space, weapons already charging. Would you like to see what happens when someone tries to threaten a species that survived the death of their homeworld? Telara realized with crystal clarity that the next few moments would determine far more than just the outcome of this encounter. They would decide whether humanity would be the Concordat's greatest ally, or its worst nightmare. The choice, she suspected, wasn't really hers to make. The militant faction's warships hung in space like predators, their weapon systems pulsing with barely contained energy. But Commander Chen's attention was fixed on something else entirely, a cascade of data flowing through systems the Concordat couldn't even detect. Interesting, she murmured. They're using quantum-locked targeting systems, advanced for conventional technology. Her fingers traced patterns in the air, interfacing with invisible fields. But they haven't noticed the others yet. Others. Telara's crystalline form vibrated with concern. As if in answer, space rippled around them. The Stellar Inheritance wasn't alone. It never had been. Massive ships phased into reality. Dozens of them, their hulls shimmering with the same living metal as the Inheritance. They emerged from dimensional pockets that shouldn't have existed, each vessel larger than the last. A flotilla of human ships that had been watching, waiting, completely undetectable to Concordat sensors. We call them Orphan Fleet, Chen explained as Telara's crew stared in stunned silence. Each ship carries the genetic legacy of millions of Earth's species, along with seeds of every plant, samples of every microorganism we could preserve. When your world dies, you learn to carry your entire biosphere with you. The militant faction vessels immediately switched to defensive formations, but Chen merely shook her head. They still don't understand. Show them, Marcus. Dr. Rivera gestured, and a new hologram appeared, but this one expanded to encompass the entire chamber, showing not just local space, but the entire Concordat territory. Throughout it, points of light began to appear, hundreds of them, thousands. Human settlements, Rivera explained. Research outposts, observation posts, dimensional anchors. We've been here for centuries, watching, learning, preparing. Some are physical installations hidden in plain sight. Others exist partially out of phase with normal spacetime. All of them gathering data, analyzing your civilizations, making sure you were ready. Ven's scales had gone completely white. Impossible. Our surveillance networks are impressive, Chen interrupted. For technology based on conventional physics, but we abandoned conventional physics when Earth died. We had to. A new alarm blared through the eternal vigilance. This time, it wasn't just coming from their systems. Every Concordat ship in the sector was broadcasting emergency signals. Ah, Chen's expression darkened. They're here earlier than expected. The space behind the militant faction vessels began to twist, reality itself seeming to tear open. Through the breach poured something that defied description. Shapes that shouldn't exist, moving in ways that violated every law of physics the Concordat had ever discovered. The ancient ones. Chen's voice carried the weight of centuries. The same beings that destroyed Earth. They'd been sleeping, scattered across the galaxy. Until now. The impossible entities began to move toward the militant faction ships, which were already turning to engage. Their weapons fired. Advanced energy weapons that could crack planets. The beams passed harmlessly through the Ancient Ones, as if they weren't even operating in the same dimension. "This is why we reveal ourselves now," Chen explained, her hands moving through complex patterns as she interfaced with systems beyond Concordat understanding. "They're waking up, all of them. Across every galaxy they've seated themselves in, and conventional weapons can't touch them." The militant faction ships began to break apart, their hulls twisting into impossible geometries as the Ancient Ones reached for them with appendages made of warped spacetime. "High Observer," Chen turned to Telara, her eyes now glowing with internal light. "Your people have a choice to make. The Concordat can try to face this threat alone, with weapons that cannot harm it and defenses that cannot stop it. Or, the human fleet began to move, their living metal hulls flowing like liquid as new configurations emerge. Weapons unlike anything the Concordat had ever seen, defenses that bent reality itself. Or you can join us. Learn what we learned. Evolve as we evolved. Help us fight the beings that forced humanity to become something new. Because this isn't just our war anymore. It never was." Through the viewing portal, they watched as the Ancient Ones finished with the militant faction ships, leaving twisted sculptures of metal floating in space. The entities turned their impossible attention toward the assembled fleets, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the fate of known space hung not on the decisions of the ancient Concordat, but on their willingness to accept help from the children of a dead world who had transformed their own extinction into transcendence. The Ancient Ones began to move, and time for discussion was over. The real war, the one humanity had been preparing for since Earth died, was about to begin. The Ancient Ones moved like oil through water, their impossible geometries distorting space itself. The surviving militant faction ships retreated, their weapons useless against entities that existed partially outside normal spacetime. But the human fleet held position, their living metal hulls rippling with patterns of light that seemed to bend reality around them. "All Concordat vessels, fall back to safe distance," Commander Chen's voice carried across all frequencies. "You can't fight them with conventional weapons. Watch and learn." The Stellar Inheritance's hull began to transform, sections flowing like liquid metal as new structures emerged. Dr. Rivera's hands danced through holographic interfaces, his movements orchestrating changes that defied physics as the Concordat understood it. "The Ancient Ones exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously," he explained as he worked. "That's why normal weapons pass right through them. But we've had 3,000 years to study their nature, to understand what they truly are." The human fleet moved in perfect synchronization, their ships arranging themselves in complex geometric patterns. Energy began to flow between them, creating lattices of light that seemed to fold through dimensions the Concordat couldn't perceive. "They're not invincible," Chen continued, her eyes now glowing with internal light as she merged with her ship's systems. "They're just operating on principles your civilization hasn't discovered yet. We learned their rules the hard way when they destroyed Earth. Now we use those same principles against them." The Ancient Ones surged forward, their impossible forms reaching out with appendages made of twisted spacetime. But as they approached the human fleet, something changed. The lattices of energy between the ships began to pulse, each beat sending ripples through reality itself. "Now," Chen commanded. The human fleet's response was beyond anything the Concordat had ever witnessed. Their weapons didn't fire beams or projectiles. Instead, they seemed to alter the fundamental nature of space around the Ancient Ones. Reality itself began to crystallize, forcing the entities into a single-dimensional state. The Ancient Ones reacted violently, their forms writhing as they were forced to exist solely in normal spacetime. But the human fleet pressed their advantage, their living metal hulls now generating fields that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics locally. "High Observer," Chen turned to Telara, who had been watching in stunned silence. "Your ships may fire now. Their defenses are temporarily constrained to this dimension. Telara hesitated only a moment before giving the command. The Concordat fleet opened fire, their most powerful weapons finally finding purchase on enemies that had seemed untouchable moments before. Where the Ancient Ones had been invulnerable, they now began to shatter under the combined assault. But victory came with a price. As the last Ancient One fell, alarms blared across every ship in the sector. Dr. Rivera's expression grew grim as he studied readings that only the humans could see. "They sent a signal," he announced, "quantum entangled, propagating through all dimensions simultaneously. They're waking up everywhere. All of them." Chen nodded as if she had expected this. "How long?" "Hours, maybe days before the next wave arrives. But they'll keep coming, and each wave will be larger than the last." Through the viewing portal, debris from the battle drifted like cosmic snow. Fragments of Concordat ships mixed with crystallized pieces of the Ancient Ones. The human fleet had already begun to reconfigure, their living metal hulls repairing damage and adapting to new threats. "Your civilization stands at a crossroads," Chen addressed Telara and her crew. "The Ancient Ones won't stop until every species in this galaxy is either destroyed or transformed beyond recognition. We've been preparing for this war since they took Earth from us, but we can't fight it alone." Telara's crystalline form pulsed with the weight of decision. "The Concordat has never faced a threat of this magnitude. Our protocols. Your protocols were written for a universe you thought you understood," Chen interrupted gently. "That universe doesn't exist anymore. It never did. The only question now is whether your people are ready to embrace a new understanding, or if pride will blind you to the only path forward." As if to emphasize her words, new spatial distortions began to form at the edge of their sensor range. The next wave of Ancient Ones was already approaching, and it was massive. The time for debate was over. The galaxy would either evolve, or it would die. And the children of Earth waited to see which path the Concordat would choose. The void between galaxies churned with impossible geometries as the Ancient Ones poured through dimensional rifts by the thousands. But they faced something unprecedented. A unified fleet of human and Concordat vessels. Their technologies merged in ways that transformed both. The stellar inheritance led the defense, its living metal hull now interfaced with crystalline structures grown from Telara's own matrix. Throughout the fleet, similar transformations had taken place. Human dimensional science merged with Concordat quantum mechanics. The children of Earth had shared their knowledge, and the ancient alliance had evolved beyond its own limitations. "Second wave approaching," Dr. Rivera announced. His consciousness merged with both human and Concordat systems simultaneously. "They're adapting to our previous tactics." Commander Chen nodded, her form now shimmering with the same internal light as Telara's crystalline structure. "As expected, show them what we've learned together." The combined fleet moved as one organism, implementing strategies that would have been impossible hours before. Where human ships bent reality, Concordat vessels reinforced those alterations with their own advanced quantum fields. Where the Ancient Ones attempted to shift between dimensions, they found those dimensions locked together by technologies that had never existed before this moment. "We understand now," Telara communicated across the merged fleet consciousness, "why you waited so long to reveal yourselves. Why you spent centuries preparing. The Ancient Ones didn't just destroy Earth," Chen responded as she coordinated another reality-bending assault. "They showed us what we could become, what all civilizations must become to survive them." Through the dimensional rifts, they could see it now, the true scope of the threat. The Ancient Ones had seeded themselves throughout not just this galaxy, but all galaxies. They were a cancer in reality itself, sleeping until awakened by civilizations reaching certain technological thresholds. But humanity had refused to fade away. They had taken their destruction and turned it into transcendence, preparing the way for others to follow. And now, as the combined fleet engaged the largest wave yet of Ancient Ones, that preparation bore fruit. "All ships, execute protocol transcendence," Chen commanded. The entire fleet began to transform, their merged technologies creating something entirely new. Human living metal flowed through concordat crystalline matrices. Dimensional science merged with quantum mechanics in ways that redefined what was possible. The Ancient Ones surged forward, their impossible forms reaching out to destroy and transform. But this time, they met something they had never encountered in all their eons of existence: civilizations that had chosen to evolve together, combining their strengths instead of falling to fear and pride. They never expected us to cooperate, Rivera observed as readings showed the Ancient Ones reeling from attacks they couldn't comprehend. Each civilization they've destroyed, they isolated first, made them fight alone. The galaxy will never be the same, Tilara acknowledged as another wave of Ancient Ones shattered against their combined defenses. But perhaps that was always the point. Chen smiled as the last dimensional rift began to collapse, the Ancient Ones retreating from weapons and defenses they had never meant to face. Earth taught us that destruction doesn't have to be the end. It can be a beginning. As the battle ended, the combined fleet hung in space transformed. Neither fully human technology nor concordat design, but something new. Something that could stand against the darkness between galaxies. The children of Earth had brought more than advanced technology. They had brought hope, born from the ashes of their own world. The Ancient Ones will return, Tilara observed, her crystalline form now permanently altered by its merger with human science. They'll adapt, try new strategies. Let them come, Chen responded, looking out at the fleet that represented the dawn of a new era. We'll face them together, and we'll keep evolving. The void between galaxies grew quiet again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of sleeping threats or ancient secrets. It was the silence of civilizations preparing for a future they would forge together, carrying forward the legacy of a dead world whose children had refused to accept extinction as their fate. The war wasn't over, but for the first time since Earth's destruction, humanity knew with certainty that they would not fight it alone. And in that unity lay the greatest weapon of all, the power to transform defeat into transcendence, again and again, until the very stars themselves were ready to evolve.